2024 is coming to an end, and folks, this is the perfect time of the year to reminisce on all of the great things that we got to witness from the WWE in 2024. However, this is not that video, because instead we're gonna reminisce on all of the shit that WWE crammed down your throats this year. Because in today's video, we're gonna be looking back at what I thought were the worst booking decisions from the WWE in all of 2024, because sometimes you just gotta be a little bit negative. It goes without saying, this is of course an opinion-based list, so there's gonna be things that I hated that you loved and things that you hated that I loved. So this is your chance in the comment section to vent and tell me what you thought was the absolutely worst booking decision from the WWE in 2024. I'll go through my list and I'll try to explain in as much detail as possible as to why I hated these decisions. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm really confident that you're gonna fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And don't forget, if you want even more daily wrestling content, to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap, where you're gonna get so much more extra content that we just can never upload here on YouTube. Go check it out, patreon.com/SantiZap, link in the description, link in the pinned comment. Let's go. By the way, I did go get a haircut and change my clothing mid-video, so you're not going crazy. But let's start off by talking about the original horrible booking decision of 2024. Really, the terrible booking decision that turned 2024 into the year that it was, which was Cody Rhodes being turned into a giant, massive cuck in front of millions of people. I'm talking about Cody Rhodes winning the 2024 Men's Royal Rumble, pointing at Roman Reigns saying, "You, I want you," only for then The Rock to come back to the WWE and for Cody Rhodes to give his WrestleMania main event spot to The Rock. And hell, not only did they take the WrestleMania main event away from Cody Rhodes, they made that man dap up The Rock and hug him. Imagine the insult. And here's the thing, WWE with a straight face will look at you dead in the eye and tell you that this was the plan all along, that this was where the GPS was always going to take us, that The Rock's final boss character was always something we had in mind. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I'm not an idiot. People aren't idiots. We know you screwed up. Just admit it. Because here's the thing, you took that screw up, you took that shit sandwich, and you made it into something fantastic. You turned the shit sandwich into a delicious 5-course meal that was WrestleMania 40. But never in a million years will I believe that you yourself purposely burning yourself on a stove, that you're gonna sit here and tell me that you burned yourself on purpose, that that was the plan all along. No, it wasn't. I mean, this was so universally hated by pretty much everyone that this was what created the hashtag We Want Cody movement on social media, a movement that really took on a life of its own, a movement that I firmly to this day believe is the reason why they pivoted the way that they did. And pivot they did, because it was one hell of a pivot, and it gave us one of the most memorable storylines in the history of WrestleMania season ever. But again, I'm just not going to allow WWE to tell me that this was the plan all along. I'm going to choose to believe, and even if I'm wrong, that they absolutely screwed up and they just made the best out of that screw up. But there's just no denying that taking the main event away from the Royal Rumble winner is just a bad booking decision, bad all around. Now let's talk about Jey Uso versus Jimmy Uso, because in my eyes, this is the worst match of the year. Here's the thing, it's tough to call this a bad booking decision because the booking of the storyline was actually like pretty decent. It was absolutely warranted for these two to have a high profile match going into WrestleMania 40. But here's the thing, I do believe that expectations were through the roof with this match, but honestly, expectedly so, because WWE had already done a great brother versus brother rivalry and storyline with both Jeff and Matt, as well as Owen and Brett at WrestleMania 10. And AEW had recently just done an amazing brother versus brother feud and match between the Rhodes brothers, Cody and Dustin. So the blueprint, frankly, had already been mastered by multiple wrestling organizations, and one of those wrestling organizations was the WWE themselves. So it was totally fair to expect this to be one of the best matches that WrestleMania 40 had to offer, and it was the complete a polar opposite. So really, to me, whoever booked the choreography of this match, that's who we need to fault. Whoever decided that this needed to just be a super kick fest, that's who we need to point our fingers to, because the people that created the storyline going into the match, they did their job. But how that match was booked, it was just god-awful. It was boring. It was uncreative. And then you couple that with the huge expectations that, again, rightfully we had, then you got yourself the perfect storm of something that everyone's just gonna hate. I will continue to die on this hill. Drew McIntyre winning the Money in the Bank briefcase and then immediately cashing it in an hour after winning it and then failing to cash in, thus burning the Money in the Bank briefcase for the entire year, was a bad decision. Here's the thing, there is kind of a silver lining to this, because I'm going to be honest with you, Triple H, at the very least so far, has demonstrated that he doesn't know how to book a good Mr. or Miss Money in the Bank winner. So I guess the silver lining here is that they didn't spend an entire year making Drew McIntyre look like a complete dumbass failing his cash-ins like they have with Tiffany Stratton and Damien Priest. And look, I understand the argument that, hey, this helped build Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk more, but I'm going to be honest with you, it was just adding fuel to an already raging, burning forest fire. It didn't need any more fuel. Without that moment, I still desperately wanted to see CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. I already believed that CM Punk and Drew McIntyre fucking despised each other. I didn't need the Money in the Bank briefcase being burned in order to tell me that Punk and McIntyre hate each other, because I already believed that. So it was ultimately burned to further a story that, I'm being honest with you, just didn't need any furthering. It was already at the tippity top. So what ended up happening was WWE burned one of its most fascinating and interesting plot devices, and they burned it within an hour of it entering the ecosystem. And I think that sucks ass. I know that there's some people that will argue, well, this was a good decision because no one was going to believe a Money in the Bank cash-in on Cody Rhodes or Gunther because they're booked so strong. I mean, like, that's the point of the briefcase, that it doesn't matter how strong that you're booked, because the element of surprise will break those barriers down. That's why people like Lesnar, like Cena, like Roman Reigns, some of the most powerfully booked characters in WWE history, have all been cashed in on. In some cases, multiple times. So frankly, I just don't see any reconciling this decision. I think from head to toe, it was bad. A good decision was having Tiffany Stratton win the Money in the Bank briefcase. That, folks, was a brilliant decision, because this is an up-and-comer, somebody that could instantly make a huge name for themselves with a cash-in. Unfortunately, the reason why I have her on here, it's not because she won, it's just how she's been booked throughout the year of her holding the briefcase, which has been booked like a complete fucking dumbass. And that sucks, dude. Like, I don't like the Money in the Bank briefcase holder looking like an idiot, looking weak, only for then at the end of the tunnel then looking strong, like they did with Damien Priest. I think it's great that the cash-in for Damien Priest was fantastic, but the lead up to the cash-in absolutely hurt his credibility as a champion in those initial months, which is why so many people only saw Damien Priest as a paper transitional champion. And I feel like that's unfortunately going to happen with Tiffany Stratton, although I just hope to be wrong. But I don't know anybody that's like this. I don't know anybody that's enjoyed all of these failed cash-ins and fake cash-ins and teases. Like, to me, out of sight and out of mind is just the best way to go with the Money in the Bank briefcase. And instead, they've decided to shove it in your face with all of these terrible fake cash-ins. I'll be super quick about this one because I kind of made an entire video on this a couple days ago, and this isn't really a singular booking decision. I feel like it's just a booking decision in general, and it's how NXT call-ups were booked this year. And for the most part, with the exception of like the high-profile names like Braun Breaker, it's been pretty bad. And in some cases, they just haven't been booked the best, but in the majority of cases, these people have been booked into oblivion, or maybe just not even used at all and just disappeared and fired or let go or not re-signed. Dijak is a great example. Baron Corbin is a great example. We barely get to see Blair Davenport. Kiana James has disappeared. They rarely used Ilya Dragunov, one of their most talented guys to get called up. They rarely used him on the main roster when they had him. So there's just been so many gaps with how they used NXT talent in 2024 that's deserves its entire entry here. Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. And I want to pick and choose what I'm talking about here, because I still like Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan. There's people that are on the Bandcamp that they're done with this feud, they're tired of it, and they want to move on. And to a degree, I kind of understand where those people are coming from, because this feud, let's face it, has overstayed its welcome. But I've been a lot more optimistic about this feud than a lot of people. But just because I've been optimistic about this feud doesn't mean that I can't recognize the fact that it has absolutely overstayed its welcome. And frankly, it's damaged the Raw women's main event scene, because ever since Liv Morgan has won this championship, the only one that she's had a high enough profile feud to warrant a PLE match has been with Rhea Ripley. So this title, and really this is what I'm talking about, the title being stuck in a vacuum that is Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley, that to me is the bad booking decision. Not allowing Liv Morgan to have championship defenses outside of Rhea Ripley, because there was plenty of time and several months, sometimes between their matches, where Liv Morgan could have been defending the title against other people, just like how she did with Io Sky at Saturday night's main event. I wish we got more of that for her world championship run, not just Rhea Ripley matches, meaningless crown jewel matches, Rhea Ripley matches. I felt like they just didn't do a good enough job of really making me believe that Liv Morgan's championship reign can stand on its own without Rhea Ripley. So to me, what's bad wasn't just necessarily Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. To me, what's bad is how long they decided to stick with it and how much they demanded that Liv Morgan only work with Rhea Ripley, it seemed, in 2024. Not pulling the trigger on Chad Gable versus Otis. They decided to do it here at the end of the year, and frankly, it's too little too late. At one point, this was the hot feud of the Raw mid-card. Remember when we thought that Otis was finally going to snap on Chad Gable at Clash at the Castle, at King and Queen of the Ring? We were waiting for that big implosion, which would have hopefully led to a major marquee match at a place like SummerSlam. Like, that's what we were expecting out of this feud. That's how hot it was, that we were expecting them to get a SummerSlam match spot, because it was deserved. It was one of the more intriguing storylines. It was a match that honestly we desperately wanted to see based on talent and storyline, and they didn't really end up pulling the trigger on it like definitively. Here they are now at the end of the year trying to restart this storyline, but I'll be honest, the window's closed. The window to make this a marquee mid-card match is gone. The opportunity to turn Otis into a major player in the mid-card is gone. They had it in the palm of their hands in the summer of 2024, and they chose not to pull the trigger, and it's just too damn late now. This whole feud, Damien Priest versus Finn Balor, has been so poorly booked that I don't even know where to begin. Here's the thing, the original inciting incident for the feud, brilliant, executed to perfection. Finn Balor turning on his brother Damien Priest, costing him the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam, was done to perfection. But then what happened next? When was their first match of this heated blood feud? It was at Bad Blood, 2 months later. That is way too long to pull the trigger on the first match. And then here's the thing, ever since that match, then they took months again to have them face off again at Saturday night's main event in a triple threat match. I'm sorry, but Damien Priest versus Finn Balor is not this feud that warrants or should be allowed to gestate for months in between matches. Look at Punk and McIntyre. SummerSlam, Bash in Berlin, Bad Blood, bang, bang, bang. Entire feud done in 3 months. And here we are like 6 months later, and they're still at it. They're still trying to develop this rivalry, and it's just not landing anymore. You took too long. After the turn happened at SummerSlam, their first match should have just been Bash in Berlin instead of doing this Terror Twin stuff. It just hurt everybody that was involved to not pull the trigger immediately after the turn at SummerSlam. And yet here we are, they're still trying, and people are still groaning, and people are still just not on board with this feud. Judgment Day winning the tag titles. You know what? Maybe not necessarily Judgment Day winning the tag titles. I don't think that was the worst thing in the world. It's how the tag titles were booked with Judgment Day as champions. I understood why JD McDonough and Finn Balor won the titles. From a storyline perspective, it made a tremendous amount of sense. This was Liv Morgan trying to win over the Judgment Day, trying to take the Judgment Day away from Rhea Ripley, and one of the best ways to do that is to make herself useful, and she helped JD and Finn Balor win the tag titles. That's great. It gave us new tag champions, and it advanced one of the most hot storylines in the WWE at the time, Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. And then that's it. and then they couldn't think of anything else. Literally, it was done to further the feud between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, and then they couldn't come up with anything else to do for Finn Balor and JD McDonough when they actually were asked to be champions. A near 200-day championship reign as champions where they barely defended the darn things. Not only did they barely defend it, they just didn't have any tag team related storylines until their final feud with the War Raiders. And if that was, a 1 month cycle, maybe 2 month cycle as champions, okay, but 200 days, the majority of the year, they sat there as idle champions doing nothing. They booked that tag team division into complete oblivion by doing this. Okay, I know that this is going to create some controversy, but Sami Zayn defeating Gunther at WrestleMania 40. Look, the match was so good. It was unbelievably good. To me, it's a 5-star perfect match from an in-ring perspective, from the narrative that they told in the ring. Sami Zayn's entrance was just fantastic. But this should have just been Chad Gable. Chad Gable was the underdog that people wanted to get behind, but Sami Zayn seemed to be the underdog that WWE wanted us to get behind. And we did get behind Sami Zayn during the match, but in the lead up to it, man, the general sentiment was, why is this Sami and not Chad Gable? Chad Gable was the guy that they had been building up for a year at this point to be the thorn on Gunther's side, to be the guy to dethrone Gunther, to be the guy that's got the chops, the ability, the in-ring prowess to beat Gunther. And he was always just a little bit short. And even going into WrestleMania, it looked like they could revive that. The opportunity was there, but I just feel like they went with the wrong guy, even if the match ended up being amazing. But I will continue to die on the hill that WrestleMania 40 should have been Gunther versus Chad Gable. I truly, firmly believe that. The creation of the Crown Jewel Championship for Crown Jewel every year. Why is this on here? Because no one asked for this. This was just not something that people were clamoring for. I get that they want to do something big, something memorable specifically for these Saudi shows, but the best way to make Saudi shows memorable is to make them part of the regular canon of matches. It's part of the regular PLE cycles. By forcing this show to be a giant exhibition between champions where the end result won't matter, that is what does the opposite of making these shows memorable. These are the types of shows that get forgotten instantly after they end. And it's a shame because these Saudi shows were making such great strides at becoming can't miss events. And honestly, the Crown Jewel matches between the two champions, those are honestly just giant exhibition matches that you can miss, and you will miss anything related to storylines moving forward. It was also pretty tone deaf for them to announce this before giving us the women's mid-card titles, which is the thing that we actually wanted, and a set of titles that would actually advance things in the WWE. Granted, they ended up giving that to us, but it was tone deaf to announce these monstrosities. And monstrosities they are. They are the ugliest titles in the WWE, in my opinion. The women's War Games match. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's because it's bad. It's just that it just shouldn't have even existed in the first place. It's funny because up to this point, Survivor Series War Games 2024, the women just consistently always had the better gimmick matches than the men. Royal Rumble Elimination Chamber, the Money in the Bank ladder match, previous year's War Games, they were always the better of the two. But this was the year that they weren't. And honestly, they just shouldn't have had a War Games match. It just sort of felt like they gave them a War Games match for the sake of meeting the War Games quota for War Games 2024. There was frankly just no reason to have these teams go up against each other in such a way where it warranted War Games. I can't tell you a good reason as to why this was in the War Games cages in the first place. It didn't make any sense to have the two women's world champions be on the same team, even though in the previous PLE cycle, they feuded with each other for the Crown Jewel Championship. And what's worse is, why would you have both of those champions be on the same team and then fucking lose? It was just bad ideas, bad decision making all throughout the beginning and the end of War Games when it comes to the women. So there really weren't that many. And a couple of these, I had to really stretch me not liking them because at the end of the day, WWE had a fantastic booking year in 2024. For the one bad thing that they did, they made 30 great decisions. It was just a great year, but sometimes you just got to be a little bit negative. All right, that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.